For me, it's trust, obviously the compliance part of it as well, which is absolutely huge. It's people's livelihoods. It's not about me. It's not about how we process. It's not about HMRC. It's about that individual right at the end. Resilience has been a big part of my entire journey. Maybe 2 years ago, it was then that I realised how dyslexia had made me into the person I am now.
Keeping businesses thriving, compliance and safe, forecasting strategy, it's all on our mind. It's time payroll took its place in the boardroom to shine.
Managing a global team is complex, but Deal makes it simpler with payroll, HR, IT, and compliance all in one place. That's why over 35,000 businesses trust Deal to hire, pay, and manage their teams worldwide. See how Deal works at deal.com/nickday. That's DEEL.com/NICKDAY. Deal, your forever people platform. Welcome back to the Payroll Podcast. Now, how do you build a payroll business while managing chronic illness, supporting family through crisis, and writing forewords, judging awards, being an award winner, whilst becoming one of the most respected voices in the payroll profession? Well, today's guest didn't just survive those pressures. She built a thriving payroll firm throughout them. And today is going to be a really exciting journey talking about payroll right from the basics and how we fell into this profession all the way through to entrepreneurship. But before we get there, if you're new to the show, welcome. Please do remember to click subscribe or follow. But most importantly, if you can, leave us either a review, because that really helps the algorithms get us more visitors. But even more importantly than that, share this episode with your payroll colleagues and friends, because together we can really raise the profile of this wonderful profession worldwide. And that is very much the aim of this show. Now, as I mentioned in my brief introduction, today we are, of course, joined by the wonderful Kay Augustus. She is CEO and founder of Augustus Payroll Services, a boutique payroll firm built entirely on trust, care, and personal service. Now, in the last year alone, she's completed a major acquisition. She's onboarded over 85 clients with 100% retention. She's grown turnover. She's moved offices. She's sought without external investment, I should say. But even above all of that, she's also exhibited and spoken at Accountex 2025. She became a CIPP ACE 25 awards judge, and she won the Innovation in Payroll Award at the Association of Bureau Managers recently, and I was there in attendance. A wonderful event and a very deserving award as well it was for UK. Having been a judge and seen the submissions from the other side, it was really lovely to see you get that. So we're going to find out a lot more about your journey today, Kay. So welcome to the Payroll Podcast. How are you feeling?
Really good. Thank you so much for that introduction. If that isn't going to swell my head, I don't know what will, Nick. That's amazing. Thank you.
Well, listen, I know how hard it is. As entrepreneurialism, I should say, is really difficult. It's challenging, and you're doing it while raising a family. You're doing it whilst going through a lot of other things as well. Now, I know, and we spoke about this because we sat together briefly at the recent Reward Strategy event. We both said that everyone is going through something, and the world just needs to be a little bit more kind. But we're going to find out more about what you've been through and how you've managed to go from, payroll administration, working for others, to launching your own business to great success in just a moment. Before we do, first question: what does the word payroll mean to you?
Well, for me, it's trust, and obviously the compliance part of it as well, which is absolutely huge. But it's people's livelihoods. It's about that person who's at the end of the pay slip. It's not about me. It's not about how we process. It's not about, HMRC. It's about that individual right at the end. And I think we have to take that personally. We have to personally feel quite liable if something goes wrong. I've literally lost sleepless nights over payroll previously, thinking to myself, oh my gosh, what if we did that wrong? What could we have done better? So for me, it's looking after that person at the end of the payslip.
Absolutely right. Well, I think we talked a lot as well when we met. It's all about trust, right? That trust that people rely upon. We think of it just as a payslip, but it represents so much more than that. Now, of course, quite recently, you have, of course, launched your own business. So tell me a little bit about your origin story. What led you? Tell us about your background so the audience are more aware, and what led you to launching your own business.
So going right back to the start. So going back to school, for instance. I was an academic, at all. I was heavily asthmatic, chronic asthma, in and out of hospital all the time. And I was statemented dyslexic as well. And I was pretty much told, or my parents were actually told, and these words stick with me, she won't amount to much. And my parents actually fought to keep me in mainstream school because they knew that I just needed to learn differently. I didn't learn the same way as my classmates did, but because of the asthma as well and being in and out of hospital, I was just falling further and further behind. So I was told I wouldn't amount to much. I scraped through my GCSEs, but I absolutely exhausted myself and I didn't want to carry on with school. I did, however, have very supportive parents, and my father knew he didn't just want me to just sit there and not do anything. So he dared me. If I could get a job in a week, I'll buy you a car. All right, okay, let's go for this. And I did. I found my first job actually it wasn't exactly payroll, but it was as an administration assistant for a local packaging company, and slowly started to input into the payroll. I started, covering people when they were off on sick. And eventually I started doing some night college courses. And then it was like your Sage Line 50 kind of courses and stuff. I didn't know anything about the degree and things then. And I did those courses because I wanted to be more confident in what I was doing. I didn't just want to go in there and rely on the software and press the buttons. And eventually then I started getting bigger jobs, moving up the ladder and things like that. And lo and behold, a few years later, I mean, there's been lots in between, and I'm sure we'll discuss that, but it ended up eventually with me now feeling like I've got my purpose, and that resilience I've built up from being told I can't do these things, to then wanting to prove people wrong and owning my own business eventually. I know we skipped a bit in between, but I'm sure we'll get there.
Yeah, no, it's good. That's a really good whistle-stop tour. I mean, just to bring this to light, of course, you battled chronic asthma, fibromyalgia. You've supported your daughter as well through a mental health crisis. And we talked about that because I've been through something very similar. And I know how much emotional resource that can take, but also how much resilience you need to have to work with someone you love so dearly through a difficult time. And you do all that while growing your business. But what was the problem you initially were trying to solve? So I know when I launched my business, I felt that payroll recruitment back in the day had become a little bit like a CV factory. People weren't getting to know the candidates. People weren't getting to know the clients. And I thought there was an opportunity for something to shift. I wanted to get to know the people better, match people to culture, not just to skills. And that was kind of the birth of JJ Recruitment, and we've evolved since then. But there was a problem I was specifically trying to solve. So what were you trying to solve? What do you think you could do differently that led to the birth of Augustus Payroll Services?
Well, it's definitely, payroll is definitely undervalued, completely and utterly. And I was working as an associate director for a local accountancy company, and they don't see the value of payroll. It's still classed as that back office function. We'll give this service away for free because we're getting accounts or we're doing their bookkeeping and stuff like that. So for me, I saw payroll as that valued service. And, we've got 162 clients now who could potentially get this cheaper from somebody else. However, they come to us because they know that we are experts in our field. So I certainly think that we need to, raise the voice and raise the profile of payroll completely. And that's what I want to do. I want to raise the profile of it so people can actually see that it's a value added service, not just an additional add-on that accountants and bookkeepers are doing. We're not a one-stop shop for absolutely everything. We are our own experts in our own right.
I couldn't agree more. It's moving at payroll from cost center to value driver. And we need to amplify our voice a little bit. Hopefully the podcast supports that mission, if you like, moving from invisibility to influence is what I say in the world of payroll, which we need to do.
Yeah.
But you've obviously had to try and keep the business alive through a difficult situation. Sometimes trying to keep our family alive on one side, keep our business alive on the other. How did you still manage to not just keep the business going, but you grew the business as well? I mean, I know that's a phenomenal ask. Talk us a little bit through those moments.
So, I mean, the business actually fully started mainly because of the need for me to have more flexible role. So my daughter decided back in 2023 that she didn't want to be here anymore. She attempted suicide, and I've had permission to discuss this with her, and she is now growing with the business as well. So she attempted suicide. She didn't want to be here anymore. It was the end of mine and my husband's world, to have a child turn around and think that they're not valued, think that they're not wanted. It's an awful, awful position to be in. And at that moment in time, I was working for another company. But I didn't want I was committed to my family more so than I was that employer. My family is so much more important to me than a job. So me and my husband just literally sat down and we said, what are our priorities here? And our priority was to safeguard our daughter. So I decided to quit the job, look after my daughter, and rather than sitting on my hands while she was safeguarded and she was in school, I decided that I was going to go out and network and speak to people. And I didn't have any major plan at that time, but I just decided that I just didn't want to sit on my hands and just loathe in my own self-pity or anything. So I went out networking, I spoke to people, and eventually I just managed to just naturally pick up some clients. And that's how Augustus Payroll was born. But likewise, it's grown because as the need for our daughter has sort of like dropped off of my responsibility a little bit, the business has gone up, and we've got more clients. Like I said, we've gone from literally 0 to 162 in just over 2 years. So we've had an amazing growth. I mean, part of that was due to an acquisition as well. But like I said, that was 85 clients at the time. But, we've still managed to get those other 80 clients naturally just through networking and speaking to people and through recommendations. But yeah, I'm very proud of where we are now, what we've done and the growth. And my daughter's helped me build that as well. Not just by, doing admin and stuff like that, but she's given me that persistence, that need to have that flexibility within my life. If I've needed to sort of drop anything, I've been able to drop it in a moment and I can just pick payroll up then, whether it be 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. The job gets done, as we know, with all payrollers, the job gets done, but it's happened around my life as well.
Well, I take my hat off to you. Honestly, I think you and your daughter have shown fantastic courage and resilience in what are very difficult moments. And it's interesting because it's, we had this discussion and I never knew you'd been through your situation. You never knew I'd been through mine. For those not familiar, my daughter, slightly different situation, but she was diagnosed 2.5 years ago now with anorexia nervosa. And not something I've actually discussed on this show either. So that might be a shock to some that are listening to it. But it does put everything into perspective where you've got to put your family first and things have to change. Yeah. And it's sometimes, good things come out of bad situations. That perspective can be really, really valuable. And when you see them grow, and unfortunately, both in your daughter's situation and in mine, there's been a really good recovery on the other side of it. Although we're always mindful as parents that we've got one eye on checking that continues. But, it brings you closer and it puts a lot of good things into perspective. And one of those, I think the 5 biggest regrets of the dying that a nurse study did said that one of the biggest regrets is, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. And payroll people are sometimes guilty of working too hard for the sake of others. And it's what this makes this profession so wonderful. But I think you gave a really good example of that self-reflection as well, of taking stock and realizing how far you've come. And I think that's really, really important. Now, you mentioned your acquisition in your response. I think that acquisition, if I'm correct, happened in June 24, where you onboarded 85 clients in just 2 weeks. Tell me a little bit about that, because that's a big growth journey. Must have been scary. Nothing you've done before. Talk us through that process.
It was absolutely huge at the time, and my husband, I've got to say, was he was proper. He's my cheerleader. He is, and it was thanks to him as well, because I would never have gotten the acquisition without him. But I mean, so I got contacted by a liquidator who told me that there's a company in Bristol who are going into liquidation. Their books were all fine. It was just literally a matter of, it was a father and daughter business. And their staff had left and they just decided they just didn't want the hassle anymore. But the acquisition had to happen in 2 weeks. Now, how it was going to happen in 2 weeks, I didn't have a clue. So I went to a friend of mine who's a solicitor and I said to him, look, can this even happen? Can we get contracts signed, and across the line in 2 weeks? I'd gone to the likes of Dev Bank and Business Wales. I couldn't even get an appointment within 2 weeks' time to actually see somebody about raising capital for it. So, we spoke to them anyway. Me and my husband sat down on a Teams call with the business owners, and we literally just started crunching some numbers. And the business was turning over £72,000 per year, and numbers were good, client numbers were good, and the retention was great. So we just thought, right, okay, the gentleman was asking us for 1.5 times the revenue, and I was like, well, I'm not going to find like £100,000 in my back pocket or down the back of the sofa. So I said, we're just not going to get anywhere if those are the kind of numbers that you're after. And they kept coming back and forth to us anyway, and we thought the conversation's still going. They know our stance, where we are. And eventually I just turned around and I said, look, to my husband, I was like, we've just sold our beloved VW camper van. I've literally got about £15,000 in the bank. I said, can I just borrow that and just see where it goes? And my husband, like I said, he's the biggest champion of the business. And he just turned around and he said, yeah, let's do it. So they were insistent they wanted a down payment. So we said, right, well, we've got £15,000. That's what we've got, if that's the down payment you want. And we'll agree to the next 6 months being 50% of the recurring revenue can be paid over to you. And they accepted. They had another offer apparently that was bigger than ours. And I genuinely believe them, because they had nothing to lose. It was after they'd accepted our offer that they told us that. But they liked me, they liked us, they liked the business ethics and things, which was really, really nice to hear, you know. And they just thought it fit better with the clients than their other offering. So onboarding then 85 new clients was just absolutely bonkers. And like I say, I had the help of my husband. I had the help of my daughter, all doing like background jobs, 64/8s, sending out contracts to the clients and things like that. Fortunately, they were all using exactly the same software as we were. So it was a matter of just taking them from one software to another. And then speaking to the clients, you know, I literally picked up the phone to the majority of them. It was just like that, you know, I'm Kay now, dealing with your payroll. And it was quite stressful, but it was so liberating as well. You know, all of a sudden your business has gone from this tiny little business to all of a sudden being this bigger entity. It was just me at the time then, unfortunately. It was only me, and I didn't have time to recruit. So hence why I had to bring in my husband and bring in my daughter and stuff, you know. It was bonkers, but we did it. I don't know how we did it, probably 80, 90, 100 hours a week. No sleep. But like I said, I couldn't have done it without the family supporting me. My son even, you know, down to like, you know, him cooking dinner or something, just everybody literally supporting me and coming together. And then about the October, November time, then we started then bringing in, other members of staff to be able to support the growth. Obviously, I would have put other things in place. I would have had a team already there had I have known this acquisition was going to happen. But in 2 weeks, I just didn't have no notice whatsoever.
Well, again, fair play. I'm a big believer that courage is cultivated. You know, I've got a passion for fear and studying it. And, if we never do the things that make us scared, how can we ever find out how brave that we are? And it sounds like, you lean into fear to find your potential, and you've lent into it with 85 clients, 2 weeks, put all your family involved, got through it. And if I understand correctly, unless this has changed since we last spoke, you used to have 100% retention of every single one of those clients, which I think is fantastic as well. So that gives you, our listeners a bit of an idea of the service and the dedication you put in. Let me ask you a question about those 85. How did you go about specifically, I guess, building the level of trust that's required from 85 new clients so quickly? Because I'm sure they would have had opportunities to shift providers in that moment. Yeah. What was it you did that kept them on board and have kept them on board ever since?
I think it's that personal element of it again. You know, I was always at the end of the phone. For a lot of the clients, it was a matter of they just literally wanted to pick up the phone. They wanted to make sure, and it was a big thing, was to make sure that the business wasn't being outshored, taken out across the border or anything like that. They wanted to make sure that we were the ones that were actually processing the payroll, and that we were going to be the point of contact. I say we, it was me, that being their point of contact. And there was this big element of trust in the fact that we weren't going to offshore the payroll. And that was a big question. And like I kept on saying to them, we've got so much good talent in the UK. I don't need to offshore the work, you know? And I've always told my clients that that's going to be our biggest thing. We'll never offshore to a different country because we've got so much good UK talent, and I will make sure that I am doing all the hours before that actually happens.
Oh, very good. Now, something I wanted to ask, because you are someone who's been through the journey that a lot of people do aspire to. Sometimes people don't necessarily have the courage, for whatever reason, to make the step from working for an employer to becoming self-employed, to launching your own business. But it's more than just making that first step. Then the next step, of course, is building a payroll brand. And there's all these challenges that we don't always see when we first start. You suddenly realize you haven't got a logo, or you've got to register your company, and you've got to do all these different things, right, that people aren't always familiar with. Tell me some of the steepest learning curves you had to overcome in building your personal brand and your company brand.
Oh, definitely social media, I would say. It's a really difficult one to sort of crack, social media is. But, to actually build the brand, for me, it was personal and about family, and my family as well, not just my children and my husband. My family is my dogs, and my dogs have become my absolute brand now. They're all over our social medias. 3 Dachshunds, yeah. And they have become the personal brand of the business now as well. So poor people all over LinkedIn don't have to see my face so much anymore. They get to see these cute little dogs instead. But nobody tells you how to build a brand, how to do it, So I just went with whatever we felt was right. I picked literally the colors. My favorite color is pink. Bet you couldn't guess that. My husband's is orange, and we just put some navy in there as well, just to sort of mix it up a little bit. And I think branding is so important. It's one of those things that it's so easily lost when you're first starting up a business. You just kind of think, I'll just pick a logo, I'll just create it in this software or that software. But to me, my brand is the business's identity. And people are now recognizing us for our colors, for our brand, for the Dachshunds and stuff as well. But it's definitely the thing that you don't think about the most. And then obviously when you look at the likes of social media and stuff, which is, like I say, that's the most difficult part, but it's also the part that my daughter she's the social media manager now, because she's 19. She can, give her a mobile phone, and a 19-year-old is away with social media, and she's increasing the numbers now, which is lovely. But yeah, definitely social media, I would think, is the most difficult thing. But my business is mainly based on LinkedIn because that's where all our clients are.
Attention payroll leaders, if you're listening to this, you already know that payroll has never been more complex. Compliance risks are rising, skilled talent is scarce, and getting it wrong can cost your business way more than just money. It can cost you trust, retention, and of course, brand reputation. I'm Nick Day, host of this show and also CEO of JGA Recruitment Group, specialist global payroll recruiters. Here at JGA, we're so passionate about payroll, we've even turned it into music. Don't believe us? Head to your favorite audio platform and search for Payroll Powers the World, and you can quite literally join us in song about how we believe payroll deserves its moment in the boardroom to shine. At JGA, we'd like to think our passion shines through to our recruitment results as well. With a 97% retention rate and an average 19-day job brief to hire success rate, we work fast, we work strategically, and we work with purpose to connect you to the hidden payroll talent that job ads and direct search methods will simply never reach. So if you're hiring or indeed planning to hire, why not partner with the experts that are shaping the future of payroll? Partner with jgarecruitment.com today, or better yet, drop me a message directly, and together we can make sure your next payroll hire is your best one yet. Yeah, I know you've grown a lot as well through referral predominantly. It's interesting. You mentioned that branding thing. I don't know if anyone's noticed this, but I learned that lesson the hard way, and arguably I'm still learning it because I set my company up in 2008. And it's JGA. It used to be James Gray Associates. And I realized if you compare this to your brand name, Augustus Payroll Services, you know immediately what you do. With my brand name, you do not. And it's been very difficult. So we launched it, and then, people are Googling things. There's no word of payroll recruitment in the title. And I made a big error there starting. Now, of course, hopefully we've been doing this long enough. People now have that familiarization. But it's definitely been a longer battle to get there. So the second company I launched was payrolljobsboard.com. There might be a couple of trophies, actually, I can see. One in particular, I was there in attendance. There you go. So I'd like you to share what these 2 trophies are for, because I think this, successes should always be celebrated. Tell us a little about these trophies.
Well, this one's for innovation in payroll. And this was at the Association of Bureau Managers. It's a beautiful trophy. It's pretty
It is
flipping
very
heavy
pretty.
as well. I was actually nominated for that, which was even more nicer. It made it even more special. I was nominated for it. The innovation side of it, I was a bit unsure of what to say. Why am I innovative? And I put it down to the fact that because I was nominated for it, I should say that actually, is because I was nominated for it. I didn't know what was said in the application. So I wasn't sure how I was innovative. But what was put down in the application was the fact that, we are trying to shout out about payroll and its positivity within businesses and how important it is to businesses. They also mentioned the social media in their application as well. But the way I went down about it was that the fact that we're innovative because we are payroll only business. And we are charging what we are happy to charge, not what other clients think we should charge or what other companies think we should charge. And we've got our own internal pay structure, and the fact that we see it as a priority within business rather than just something that is a back office function. And then the second one, which was actually my first award that we won, was the Financial and Professional Services business. And this is for the Carmarthenshire Business Awards. And that one was my first ever award. And I was just so pleased when we got that one, just because, it's kind of tells you, you are on the map, you're on somebody's radar now, so yeah, I do display them in pride of place in the office now,
as you should. I think we talked about having to get you a shelf. You've obviously got one now. You found one for the for the backdrop, and you're putting payroll on the Welsh map, which is important as well. But it's more than that. I mean, I've watched your journey. I've been in this industry, as you know, for 2 decades, and you see the industry authorities come through, and you see people that really start to take it by the mantle. And you've recently, from my experience, it's been the last sort of 12 months or so, you've become an industry voice, you've spoken at Accountex, you've written for the CIPP, you've now a judge at the ACE 25 Awards as well. You've written the foreword, I think, for a book called The Value of Payroll. When did you realize that your story was inspiring others? Because I know that you know that it does. I know you've been through, as we mentioned, some of the things you've had to come through in your own journey as well. But it is an inspiration. People do want to hear more about this story. It's obviously one of the podcasts talking about it more now as well. I want to hear more about that story. I know our listeners do too. But how's that landing for you?
I think it was only recently, actually, when we were at Reward Strategy, and somebody actually said to me, "You're becoming a bit of a payroll personality now, aren't you?" I was like, am I? I don't know, am I? And then Jason Davenport from CIPP turned around and he said, you're all over my LinkedIn. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that, So that's possibly my kind of like reality check of like, oh my God, okay, you are getting somewhere with this now, the personal brand is building a little bit more, people are actually knowing who you are now and stuff. And yeah, I think it was that was only last week that it really kind of dawned on me. And to have people, I'm literally sitting at a table last week in Reward Strategy with Ralph Lauren, and they are talking to me and saying that they know about me, they know who I am. And I was like, wow, okay, this is kind of getting bigger now, and it is that good feeling, but it's also like, oh my gosh, like, is it moving too fast? Is it going too big too quickly? But, I'm just along for the ride, to be honest with you, Nick.
I sense even if it was Kay, you'd be ready to take it on. I think you'd lean into it. You'd lean into it. Now, I want to go back a little bit as well to some of the, how those personal challenges have actually helped others, because I also know that a little birdie tells me, because I don't think this came from you, but I know that you supported a team member through a mental health crisis as well. And you've really built a culture of care within your business. It's not just about processing payroll, it's looking after what starts off as your family, of course, but now a team of individuals. And I think that empathetic leadership is very much the future of leadership. We're moving away from that command and control style of leadership we used to have, and moving now into much more one of a coaching culture, one of empathy, one where we need to ask questions before giving responses. How's that kind of shaped the way that you run your business?
Well, that team member is my daughter. She works for the business now. Like I say, she runs all the social media, but she also does some pensions and stuff for us as well. I'm trying to educate her as much as I can in the world of payroll. That was very tough, because she's personally my daughter as well. Sure. But back in, I'm really, really proud of her, because back in only June of this year, she decided, I know what I need to help me. And she decided that she was going to get one of the sausage dogs, actually one of the brand ambassadors. She was going to get them registered as an emotional support animal. And we supported her through that application then, and she then got them registered as her assistance dog. So my one of my dogs now goes to university and studies biomedical science with my daughter, and it's her support animal. And it's hard because, I mean, she's also, partly got ADHD, possibly autism as well, but oh gosh, she's just doing absolutely amazing. So yeah, there are other, obviously, elements. There are other members of staff as well who have things, and we're a very diverse employer, really. In fact, 75% of our employees have something that is, we're neurodivergent, or we suffer with mental health. I mean, mental health is so vast right now. Everybody really suffers with it in one way or another, whether they're out and talking about it or not. And this is why I always say, there is that, parallel and flat culture of just be kind. You don't know what somebody's going through in the background.
Yeah. And it's better to talk about it than to suffer in silence, right? And knowing you've got people you can confide in and feel listened to, which is really, not with the intent of reply, but just to be there to listen, is really, really powerful. And I think it's a wonderful way to build a business. Yeah.
Been quite surprised at how many people are willing to open up with you as well about their experiences. I mean, you and I've had personal conversations about it, how other people are quite open about it. When you start opening that door, other things will come in as well, and you realize that you can help other people. And I think eventually, I mean, my daughter's only 19 now, but I think eventually she'll see that her experience, although it was negative then, will help other people and will guide other people through, because it certainly helped me in my own way. And it's, it's been the foundation of the business. And if any of my staff ever come to me and they say, I'm struggling with my mental health, then I will throw my all at helping them, simply because I don't want anybody to feel the way we felt and the way she felt all those years ago.
Yeah, absolutely right. And it's interesting because we've actually only met in person maybe 3 times, but we've known each other and who each other are probably for 15 years or so. But actually, in terms of connection, it's been much more the last 12 months. And one of the stories we shared, you talked about your Dachshunds. We also have a mini Dachshund, which we bought for my daughter when she was going through her situation. And it's amazing how, if you're that way inclined, if you're into dogs and animals and things, how much they can really help and support an individual who's having a tough time. And I know that they've got a really good connection, probably similar to your daughter. It's funny, it's the same dog as well. Although I'll be honest, our little Coco Dachshund isn't an ambassador for JJ Recruitment yet, but maybe I need to make some changes. Maybe that'll happen in the future.
Definitely. They make perfect ambassadors.
I think also, I'm going to mention something which I know you've been through. I won't have to talk about who the employer was or anything like that, but sometimes as well, we can feel silenced by our employers themselves. And I know, because I work in recruitment, that you had we shared a story, we were sharing stories when we met, that once you had an employer that didn't like the color of your hair and asked you to change it. And I've been in situations from a recruitment standpoint where employers have said, Nick, I won't interview someone out X, Y, or Z. And we have to kind of educate them and say, that's not a choice you can have, and we can either work with you and we can be inclusive and fair to everybody, or we need to close the assignment. But you've been through that yourself as well, and it can be quite difficult for someone who, if you are struggling with mental health, hearing those other things on top can be those little things that chip away at your confidence. How did you manage that situation?
I mean, the company was a corporate company, a large corporate company, and I was pulled into a HR meeting just to be told that I can't have the pink hair. And I was like, right, okay, we will only have employees who, we'll only recruit employees who have natural coloured hair. And my stance was a little bit offish with, so you're telling me you're a natural blonde, are you? And it was clearly not natural blonde. And they didn't like that anyway. So I did, for the sake of a job, I started temporary dyeing my hair, and I'm naturally quite brown, but I identify as a natural pink. And I started dyeing my hair brown just to please them. But every time I walked past the mirror, I didn't know who I was. It literally took away my identity. And why should the color of my hair make an employer feel uncomfortable enough to turn around and tell me to have to diet. What difference does it make to them if I've got pink hair, green hair, blue hair? It doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference to them. In fact, if anything, it would have made me a happier and more engaging employee if I could have just been who I am and who I was. So, I mean, I only worked there for a short period of time, approximately like 4 or 5 months, because I just didn't know who I was anymore when I was walking past the mirror. And I know that sounds quite deep, but I didn't know who I was. I just didn't feel happy anymore. There were other things as well that, I'd witnessed a really bad car accident at the time, and a young lady actually lost her life. And it was enough to sort of make me reevaluate, the young lady was actually the same age as my daughter at the time. And she'd been thrown from a car. And me and my friend were coming back from a Backstreet Boys concert, in the O2 in London. And we literally were first on the scene after this accident. And, a few days later, I found out that the young individual, she died from her injuries. And it was enough for me to realize, again, reevaluate everything. Am I happy in this situation? No, I'm not. Right. Okay. Quit your job, go to the salon, book yourself in, dye your hair back pink and be happy. And I buy things, I do things, I buy things like, for instance, I've got a Care Bears mobile phone case. It's not your normal CEO kind of phone case, but it makes me happy. I don't care what people think, because I'm more for, I'll do something that makes me happy rather than just to please somebody else nowadays.
And are your payrolls accurately, compliant, and on time? Absolutely. Right. And you've got 100% retention.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the point, right? And I think anything that dulls you, we're trying to break away from these muted cultures. We want an unmuted culture where people feel brave enough and able to speak up if they're not comfortable. And it's a shame these things still happen, but they do. And I think if you're listening to this and you feel like maybe you're in the similar kind of work environment, there is always opportunities on the other side. Like there's a chance to break away and find yourself again, which we often need to do. Now, my last question, really, I want to bring us back to advice for other entrepreneurially aspiring payroll professionals that are out there maybe listening to this, because there will be people listening who dream of starting their own business, don't know where to even start. What's the one piece of advice you would give to them? And is there anything they can do to help them maybe take their first step?
I mean, I'd definitely say don't overthink it too much. I don't think you're ever ready to sort of go into starting your own business. I don't think you can ever 100% think to yourself, I'm going to save up this amount of money. I think it's important, though, to create a disaster budget. So I didn't have exactly time to sort this out. I just quit my job and I just literally thought to myself, right, okay, I will stack shelves in large supermarkets, to make sure that we can make ends meet. But so I didn't have too much time to think about it. So the business was kind of grown through trauma, really, and it started through trauma. But I think you need to have a certain plan. You need to have that safety net, know what that disaster budget is. So what I initially did is I set up a spreadsheet, and I thought to myself, right, okay, this is how much we can afford to live on. What can I do without? We cancelled our Sky Plus package. We cancelled Disney Plus. We didn't need those. They weren't essential items. So we cancelled those. I literally checked out what we could do with our electric, our gas, what the lowest plans were that we could be on, and what is the least amount of money we can afford to live on, and what do we require, as essentials, as in your food, your water, your mortgage. And I set out targets, and I think targets are super important. It's still something I live by now. I set up targets. I needed to be able to make within the first 12 months, I wanted to be able to make my net wage, first of all, per month. And then it turned into, after, ticked that one off after about 3 months, it was then the gross wage. And then it was a matter of, okay, I want to be able to make this and maybe buy myself a car or something as well then, And by month 6, I started, I reached all of those targets. By month 3, I'd actually secured one of the bigger clients who's still with us today, secured one of the bigger clients. And that client alone was enough to just pay my salary. And I just couldn't live by that and just think to myself, okay, I'm safe now. You still have to go looking for those smaller clients then, who are your bread and butter clients, I think it's important to not think, not leave anything on the table, not think to yourself, right, okay, I won't take that one on. It's only a small client, or this one's too big for me. It's a matter of literally take everything in. If you can do it and you're confident in doing it, then just carry on. It's just a matter of don't overthink it, I would say, because I probably wouldn't have started the business. I mean, so the business was registered back in 2022 at the beginning, and I'd handed in my notice at the accountancy practice. And during that time, I probably after that, I probably had another 2 jobs before I actually started fully the business in the 2023. So I'd had my self-doubt for that 12, 18 months previously. I'd gone and worked for different clients. I'd worked for different employers. But it was about taking that leap eventually. And it was my daughter sort of forcing that leap upon me. And it's a good example of no time is a good or a bad time, because it was probably, looking back, the worst time I could possibly started a business. But in our lifestyle, it worked out fine. We made it work.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because it's funny for me because I'm listening to it and I'm seeing synergy. I launched JJ Recruitment in 2008, 2 months before Lehman Brothers went under. And we had the worst financial crisis ever known. But it was, sometimes you're thrust into these things. And when I met with you recently at the Association of Bureau Managers, I was talking about fear, and we have that voice that tells us to wait. It disguises itself as wisdom. We think it's being prudent. It's prudence talking to us, and it's saying, not yet, you're not ready. We have it in all forms of life, not just businesses, but having our first child or different things. Often we don't feel ready. It's when we don't really have a choice that sometimes it forces you to make the decisions. And as you say, there's never the perfect time. But if we always wait for perfect never comes. And you always live in a space of comparison. If you're a perfectionist and you're always comparing yourself to somebody else, well, they waited, they did, I want to do what they did. But you'll never get there. So sometimes you need to have that moment, that line in the sand that says, I'm going to go for it. And I've done my budget plan. I've done my spreadsheet. I know what I can live on. I've taken all the precautions I need to take to make sure that I can give this a go. And if it doesn't, I think you've always got the fail safe of going back to what you were doing before, right? But
that's it.
You took that step, and this is the good out of the bad, if you like. Your daughter's situation has led you to taking that decision maybe a little bit earlier, but this is where we are. 100% retention, award-winning entrepreneur, Augustus Payroll Services. And I think it's been a really inspirational story.
Oh, thank you very much, Nick.
Well, let's open the payroll vault. So 3 short, sharp questions for you. The first is this.
Okay.
One piece of advice you would give to someone just entering the payroll profession?
Learn from others. Be willing to learn from others, I would say. I think we don't bite. That's for sure. And we're very social people. We want to help, so be willing to open the door. No question is a stupid question. The stupidity is if you don't ask that question in the first place. So I definitely say be willing to learn from others. Don't just think that you're going to learn it all from HMRC or from a textbook.
Perfect. What's one thing you now know that you wish you'd known when you began your payroll career?
I'm resilient, I think. Resilience has been a big part of my entire journey. I don't think I learned how resilient I was until I was maybe 2 years ago. And it was then that I realized how dyslexia had made me into the person I am now. And I've always looked at it as a negative. And in fact, the last few years, I've embraced it and I've looked at it as more of a positive thing, makes me think differently, makes me behave differently. And it's made me definitely more resilient. I've had to learn different ways of spelling something or reading something, or doing something. And the dyslexia has given me that. So it's definitely, I've learned that I'm resilient.
Fantastic. Now, last question, you have a choice of 2. You can either describe payroll as a movie or a song and why, or you can tell us one book, mentor, resource, habit, or quote that's inspired you on your payroll journey. Which way would you like to go?
I think I'll go with the song, actually, because I think I've got a perfect one for that. Rag and Bone Man, Human. I think you forget that there is a human behind an email. There is a human behind, process in the payroll. We're not robots. We're not AI. And, as the lyrics say, I'm only human after all. And just, like I was saying earlier on, just be kind to that person, because in payroll, we only ever hear the negatives. We only ever hear that something is wrong, something is being processed incorrectly. You quite often don't hear the positives of it. And, you know, like, well done, you've done really well today. You know, you've done a good job. You've you know, got 150 payslips out today, and, you know, the client didn't bring it in until, you know, very late in the day. So you've turned it around really quickly. But instead you hear like, oh, this person wasn't paid correctly.
Yeah.
So you take on board those negatives. So yeah, we're definitely humans behind it all.
I think that's a great way to finish. I'm a big fan of a done list or a success list at the end of each day. Rather than just having a to-do list that never ever gets done, I also have a to-do list. I also have a done list. At the end of the day, I can look at it and look at all the successes and go, okay, today's been a productive day. I can reflect back and go, it's been, you know, feel like I haven't achieved anything, but I can look at my done list and go, no, it's okay. I can now stop and be with my family, which is something I used to struggle to do. So I think it's a really good example. I absolutely love the human one, particularly in the age of AI where everyone's slightly fearful about what's happening next. I think take the human out of payroll and we're in a risky business. But I think you shared a real story. So it's been a masterclass today, I think, in grit, resilience, determination, human first payroll, finishing with a rag and bone example. So thank you, Kay, for not just inspiring me, but for inspiring everyone that's followed your journey. All of the clients that you've kept as well and will continue to grow, I'm sure, are very thankful to be part of your business. If you do want to find out more, you can go to augustuspayroll.co.uk. I will put a link in the show notes so you can click straight through. And with your permission, I'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile as well, so we can keep that LinkedIn promotion work going as well for you, Kay. But otherwise, just want to say a huge thank you for joining me today on the Payroll Podcast. And if you have enjoyed the episode, please remember to click subscribe, follow, whatever it is you do on your favorite platform. But most importantly, please review the show. That really helps us to reach a wider audience. But more importantly than that, share this episode with your colleagues and friends, and we can really raise the profile of this very human profession worldwide. Kay, thank you ever so much.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Global teams are more connected today than ever, but managing payroll, HR, and IT can still feel fragmented. But Deal simplifies global work with one platform that keeps everything running smoothly. No compliance guesswork, no third-party payroll, just seamless operations backed by 24/7 expert support. That's why over 35,000 companies trust Deal to handle their global workforce. Visit deal.com/nickday to see how Deal can help. That's DEEL.com/NICKDAY. Deal, your forever people platform.